Hello friends! It has been a while since I've made a video. I think maybe almost 2 years. I'm here with a quick little demonstration as to how I made my built-in tarot / altar cloth into my giant golden grimoire. For anyone who last saw my video of my little golden grimoire, do not be alarmed. She's still here. I'm still working in her. I simply had a few workings that I wanted to record that needed a larger space that this book could not accommodate without bursting at the seams. So, hence the birth of the giant golden grimoire, her adopted older sister, her adopted much larger sister. But anyway, we're here to talk about this tarot / altar cloth that I made because tarot is important to me and my practice, and I really needed to create a space that highlighted that. So I started first with the tarot cloth. Most people I know have multiple tarot cloths and they just keep them stored somewhere. I, however, have a very curious furry little friend who likes to sniff through my things and is especially fond of chewing fabric. So, because of that, I knew that I needed this to be stored permanently in a space that only I would have access to, because this goes on a nice high up bookshelf that my furry little companion cannot reach because his legs are too stubby. So, this is a fold-up tarot cloth that has a embroidery thread closure, and I just tie it into a simple bow because that's just easiest. If you can't tell already, there is a theme in terms of colors here, and that theme is purple, which happens to be my favorite color. Use whatever color you'd like. So this folds out to be the length of roughly the length of my large grimoire, a little bit shorter, which is perfect for me so that I can store it easily. I personally do not like overhanging fabric, but so how I made this was, first off, I'm going to use a smaller piece of fabric to demonstrate just so you can see. I measured out my fabric, and I noted that there is these little holes on one edge. I bought this fabric for another project. I bought a couple of these like 99-cent 18 by 21 inch squares, or I guess rectangles, from Michael's, I believe. And I had used the fabric for another project, but I had extra. So I noted that this was here and almost instantly sliced it right off with my rotary cutter. You can also just use regular scissors. Either one is fine. Use what you have. So then at that point, you can't see it here, but I had some overhanging fabric on the lower end of my book, right down here, and I wanted to get rid of that because, again, I didn't want any overhanging fabric, even when I was working with the cloth. So at this point, what I did was, I imagine if this was the hanging off piece of fabric, I folded it up until it was either just a little bit above the edge or just right on it, and I carefully creased it with my nails, and then again used my rotary cutter, or you can use scissors to cut along that indent to get it to size. Keep in mind that if you're cutting with a rotary cutter, you should use a cutting mat, which I have right under this book. Also, if you're going to be painting, which is the next step. So I have some acrylic paint lying around, and I simply mixed some purple paint that I have with some white paint to get a lighter color, and I brushed that all over. I also watered it down just a little bit so it spread a little more easily. Still gave me a hard time because it is acrylic paint. If you don't have any paints, I would recommend getting fabric paint. Perhaps one of those poppy paint tubes from the craft store, 1 or 2 colors of your choosing. Just squiggle it across and then just smear it across your fabric. At this point, my fabric was laid out on my cutting mat, so if it got any paint stains on it, I wasn't concerned. Do not do this on carpet, it will never come out. Or hardwood, for that matter. You can maybe get it out of hardwood, but difficult. I then wanted to decorate it further, so I dry brushed on some darker shades of purple, as you can see here. And I also took a handful of Copic markers to it. Again, I had those laying around. If you just have regular markers, I'm sure that they would work just fine as well. I only used my Copic markers because they were the first things within reach. And after that, I went around adding little decorative details with some gel pen. And in fact, I actually intend to do more to this. I would like to add a little bit more decoration. I also want to blend these out into the rest of the fabric more, but I just decided to wait until I was ready to do so at another time. So at this point, I took the edge of my fabric, the right side edge. You can do the left side, it's completely up to you and your preference. I used my PVA glue and carefully drew a thin line right along here. It's actually a little bit inside, it's not right up against the edge of the paper, otherwise it would leak. And I pressed my fabric in so that it adhered to the page. Then I played around with folding and the size of the fold that I would be using in order to store this fabric. I didn't want to just fold it clean in half and hope that it would stay put. I wanted to fold it up and then enclose it with embroidery thread, as you just saw. So eventually, after a little bit of playing around, I got this 6-panel fold. And once I had this folded up in a way that I liked, that wouldn't create too much bulk in my book, I marked with a pencil the edge of the fabric, and just inside that I glued some embroidery thread. I also had this cut originally as one length, so at one point this was just one loop of embroidery thread. I always recommend cutting a little bit extra so you can trim it down later. So then once those threads were glued down, I then went ahead and added a thin layer of PVA all across this width, and I smushed down this final panel. I then also used my heat gun, and again, this is completely optional. You can just wait for it to dry or use a hair dryer if you have one, but I have a heat gun for other crafting reasons. I reiterate, I already had this. I didn't go out and purposefully buy it. I used that, gently hit it with some heat. Don't hold it too close to the drying area. It will cause some funky smells and potentially some warpage, so you want to be careful. And once it was dry, I flipped it over to this back page, or to the back of this page, I should say. And as you can see right here, I just used a glue stick and adhered, the end of the embroidery thread. I do plan to reinforce this with a bit of PVA. I also plan to glue something over this to potentially prevent fraying, but it's fine as it is for right now. And once it dried, I flipped it back over folded it up and tied it in place. And that's it. It's very simple. Anybody can do this. Do bear in mind that it is a bit of a messy project, so if you're not prepared to make a mess, I would say wait. But I hope that some of you find this helpful, and it's good to talk to you again. I hope you are doing well, and hopefully I'll make more videos in the future. If there's any videos that you would like me to make, by all means send me some suggestions either in the comments or go to my ask box on Tumblr, theillustratewitch.tumblr.com. I'll leave a link in the description. And I'm also considering opening a WordPress for all of my own personal posts. Let me know what you think. And I hope you have a lovely day, a lovely week, a lovely year, or a lovely rest of the year, I should say. We're already getting close to 2019. But anyway, this is Ro from The Illustrative Witch, signing off. It's good to see you again. Bye for now.